Today's daf Yomi is Moed Katan, Chav Gimel, Moed Katan 23. We're going to start on the bottom of Chav Beis on the Beis. Tana Rabban and the rabbis taught Chacham Shemes. Let's say we're the Chav Beis on Beis 3 lines from the bottom. Let's say there's a Torah scholar who dies, and Rashi says, "What kind of Torah scholar are we even talking about? We're talking about the Torah scholar who's Memuna al-Ayir. He's in charge of the city. Shemevak shemimenu hora." Rashi says. Everybody comes to this Torah scholar for a psak. You don't know what the halacha is, you go to the Torah scholar for a psak. So the Torah scholar dies, then Beis Medrash or batal. Nobody goes to the yeshiva to study. So for how long? So there's a dispute amongst the commentaries. Some say most say for the whole week, but some say just for one day. So if the Torah scholar dies, out of mourning for him, the whole yeshiva is not learning. Avbez and Shemei, so let's say the head of the court dies. All the yeshivas in the city stop studying Torah. They enter into the synagogue. They change where they sit. Those who are sitting in the north, those who are sitting in the north sit in the south. Those who are sitting in the south, okay, they sit in the north. Nasi was the head of the whole Klal Yisrael. He was the president of Klal Yisrael. So the Nasi Shemes, if the Nasi dies, Bati Midrashos, Kulam B'Telin, all the yeshivas are nullified. B'nei HaKnesses and the people of the synagogue, Nechnasim Beis HaKnesses, they enter into the synagogue. V'korin Shiva V'yotzin. They read the 7 aliyos and then they leave. What about Monday and Thursday? So Monday and Thursday they read less. Rashi says why? Because they don't pray in the synagogue. They just do the Torah study in the synagogue. But praying, everybody has to pray on their own because they're in mourning because the Nasi died. We're on the top of 23a. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Omer lo sheyelchu v'yataylu b'shuk. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says not that they should go out. Okay, so they're not going to the synagogue to pray. So what are they going to do with their extra time? No, we don't want them to go to the movies. They're not going shopping in the malls. They sit silently. And okay, so you're supposed to sit silently when the Nasi dies, but now we're even talking about regular Shiva. You're not even supposed to say Shmuos v'agados, teachings of Torah. Become the minhag of Klal Yisrael that people study Mishnayos. They study Mishnah, same letters as Neshama, as a soul. To study Torah in the house of a mourner. And in fact, some great Rabbanim even told people to do this, to study Torah in the house of the mourner. But that's not the case. Really, you're not supposed to say Shmuos v'agados v'beis Avil. Although today it's become the custom, but the Talmud says you're not supposed to study Torah in the mourner's house. Chananya ben Gamliel shaya omer Shmuel v'agadav beis Avil. Chananya ben Gamliel, they used to say that he used to study teachings and homilies in the mourner's house.
On Shabbos.
During the week. The question is, can a mourner study Torah on Shabbos? That's another question. That's a question about whether or not we do things that in private are you allowed to do. We're going to get to that question at the end of the daf. Tana Rabbanan Avel Shabbos Rishona. So on Avel, the Shabbos Rishona means first, and Shabbos here is a dispute. Does it mean the first Shabbos or the first week? There's a dispute amongst the commentaries. The Shabbos Rishona, Yotzim Petach Beis. So first week, most commentaries say it means the first week. That's what he's certainly not allowed to go out of his house. Shniya, the second one, Yotze ve'enu Yoshev b'kom. The second week he goes out, but he doesn't sit in his place. Shlishis, the third week, Yoshev b'kom. He can already sit in his regular place. Ve'enu medaber, but don't speak to anyone. Revius, the fourth week, Hareu kachol adam. The fourth week, he's like everybody. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo hutzrachol Omer Shabbos Rishona lo yetzim mipetach beis. Rabbi Yehuda says they didn't need to say that the first week you shouldn't leave your house. Sharei kol nechnasel beiso. Because of course he's not leaving his house because everybody's coming into the house to comfort him. So rather, the second week, so the second week he doesn't leave his house. Shlishis, Yotzi ve'eno yoshev. Come on the third week, he goes out and he doesn't stay in his place. Revius, the fourth week, Yoshev b'mkomo ve'eno medaber. The fourth week, he sits in his place and he doesn't speak. Chamish is hareu k'chol adam. The fifth week, he's already like every person. Tan Rabbanan, the rabbis talk, called Shloshim Yom. When it's doing that, the first 30 days, because for everybody other than a father and mother, the Shiva is 30 days. So for those 30 days, you're not allowed to get married. What about during the 12 months for your for a father or mother? You're allowed to get married. Then since it's a mitzvah and you can't delay something that long, then the consensus is that you can. Mesa Isha, let's say somebody's wife dies. Also, we saw Isha Cheres. Then you're not allowed to marry another woman until 3 festivals pass. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rago Rishon Mesheni Asar Shlishi Mutter. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's only after the first 2 festivals pass, but before the third one, you can get married. What's the reason why you're not allowed to get remarried until 3 festivals pass? So about this, Tosfos brings two separate explanations. The first explanation Tosfos says is because we want your holidays to be without joy, so you don't forget your first wife, because you have to give her honor and respect. So we want your holidays to mark the occasion that you're missing your wife. The opposite explanation, Tosfos gives a second explanation and says that maybe it's actually because not that we want to make sure you don't forget your first wife, but just the opposite. We want to make sure you do forget, and so you don't compare the first wife to the second wife and give the second wife a hard time, and you can't have too many comparisons. So therefore, you have to go 3 festivals, so you're no longer comparing the first wife to the second wife. So that's why you have to wait that period of time. The second wife shouldn't be judged against the first wife. So Tosfos also points out that typically speaking, we have a rule that we follow the lenient position when it comes to mourning. But this is not a question of mourning. The mourning is over. This is a question of psychological sensitivity. And so therefore, it has nothing to do with the laws of mourning. That's what Tosfos says. So therefore, we follow the strict position, and all things being equal, a person should wait 3 festivals after their spouse marries before remarrying. However, if there are extenuating circumstances, says the Talmud, they may go banim, mutter wisal alter. If he has no children, he can remarry immediately. Mishum bitol pirya, because we don't want him to lose the opportunity to have children. Hinicho banim Katan, and also let's say she died and she left behind young children. Also mutter wisal alter. Also, we can remarry immediately. Mishum. Because we're concerned otherwise that how are you going to provide for them? And then the Talmud tells us an incident, Ma'isa Shemesa Ishto Shel Yosef HaKohen. There's an incident where the wife of Yosef HaKohen died. V'amar la'achosa v'beis hakvaros. He says to his wife's sister, while they're still in the cemetery, go and take care of your children, of your sister's children. Meaning, in the cemetery, he said to his sister-in-law, "Let's get married and take care of your children." And look up.
How's the Yosef the Kohen in the cemetery?
Well, you're allowed to be in. So the question is, how is he allowed to be in the cemetery? So a Kohen is allowed to be for his wife. For his wife, he's allowed to be in the cemetery. Let me just finish this line, then I'll come back and address this question about if this was appropriate. How did this happen? Even though he basically proposed to her, they didn't consummate the marriage. Before they waited a lot of time. And what's that amount of time? What is that? He waited 30 days and then he married her. But still, this is obviously, let's say a jarring story. The story is jarring because he's proposing to his wife's sister, and he wants to get married to her during Shiva. So how can you get married while you're in Shiva? You're not even allowed to have marital relations in Shiva. So how is he allowed to do it? So some want to say that actually The Riva explains, so besides the Riva, and we're talking about the funeral was on the eve of Pesach. So the Shiva was over because Pesach canceled the Shiva. So therefore, he wanted to get married to her then. Some want to say, no, that this was at the end of Shiva. It doesn't mean exact. That's what Tosfos says. Lav dafka. Tosfos says, no, don't mean to take the story literally. But another explanation is, he was very practical. And in those days, let's say, you were concerned. You're concerned how you're going to take care of your children, and what's going to happen. So that was what Yosef HaKohen did. So Tana Rabbana, he had to wait. You can't marry your wife's sister if your wife would still be alive, but he had to wait for the wife to die, and then he'd be allowed to do it. Tana Rabbana and Kol Shloshim Yom with Geyutz. All 30 days are Geyutz, meaning to say it's prohibited to wear freshly pressed clothing. Whether it's new clothing or old clothing, you're not going to be allowed to wear it. And also, whether they're old clothing that they just came out of the press. Rabbi Omer Rabbi said, no, only new clothing are prohibited. Rabbi Shimon says, Rabbi Shimon says, no, only thing that's prohibited is new clothing, levanim, only if they're white, because white clothing in the time of the Talmud was especially significant. Abaye nafek beguarded the sarboa karevi. Abaye went out while he was in his period of 30 days of mourning. He went out with this guarded the sarboa, this white garment that was pressed, but it was old. Then this is like Rebbe, because Rebbe only prohibited a new white, but not old white. Rava nafek bechimutza romisa sumakta. Rava went out with a Roman shirt, a shirt from Rome that was red, but it was chadati, it was new. And he held like Rebbe Lezer Bar Shimon. He held like Rebbe Lezer Bar Shimon, who said that the only thing that's prohibited is white, and in this case it was red. So therefore Rebbe allowed it. Now we're going to talk for a little bit about the laws of mourning on Shabbos. Do they apply on Shabbos versus a festival? So it said in our Mishnah, we said Shabbos counts towards the Shiva, but it doesn't interrupt it. So it says the Gemara, Bnei Yehuda, Bnei Galila, so the people of Yehuda is in Judea, in the center of Israel, Bnei Galila in the Galilee in the north, Hani Amri, so we're now on the top of Chav Gimel Amav 23 B's. Some said Yesh Avelos b'Shabbos, some say that there is mourning on Shabbos. And some say there's no mourning on Shabbos. What are we talking about when we're asking this question? Obviously, there's no mourning in public, but the question is there mourning in private? And when we say is there mourning in private, the real question is about marital relations. If you say there's mourning, you're not allowed to have marital relations while you're in your period of mourning on Shabbos. But if you say there's no mourning in private, then you would be allowed to. So what's the basis for the argument? Hani Amri ein avelos b'Shabbos. So some say there's no mourning on Shabbos. And some say there's no mourning on Shabbos. Manda Amri yesh avelos b'Shabbos. Some say there's mourning on Shabbos. Why? The Katan Oeh, because it states that Shabbos is Oeh, so it means it counts for the Shiva. Manda Amri ein avelos b'Shabbos. The one who says that there's no mourning on Shabbos, the Katani ein mafsekas, because it says Shabbos does not interrupt. So it says the Gemara Isa Kataitach. If you want to say that there's mourning on Shabbos, so if you want to say there's mourning on Shabbos, hashta avelos. Well, if there would be mourning of sukei mibaye, would they have to say it does not interrupt? For sure, it doesn't interrupt. There's mourning. So the Gemara says, well, what about the reverse? So why does it say that Shabbos is oah, that Shabbos counts? So he said, no, it's ID to kavil miss. Because the next clause in the Mishnah has to say that it doesn't count, that the regel is eno oah, the regel that festival does not count. Therefore, it says about the Shabbos that it does count. But really, Shabbos break, there's no mourning whatsoever. According to one who says that there is mourning in private on Shabbos, but what does he do with the fact that the Mishnah says Shabbos does not break it? So he says, no, Mishum the Kabbalah misna seifa, because it's going to say about the festival that it's mafsikin, that it does break it, tana reisha aina mafsekes. So therefore, it says in the first clause, it is not mafsekes, that it does not break it. But really, it is oah. Really, it counts to it. So, what's the difference between Shabbos, where it's Oed, that the counts towards the days of Shiva, as opposed to a festival where it doesn't? Tosos here also, and Tosos Dibur Maskil, Manda Amar on 23b. Tosos tells us that as follows: Shabbos Oed, I forgot the Shabbos Oed Rego Eno Oed. What's the reason why Shabbos counts towards the Shiva but not a festival? Ho Ve'ena Velos Klal. Because in this festival, there's no Velos at all. There's no mourning. Because on a festival, it says the word Visimcha. It says there's the word of Samachta. There's the word of rejoicing. And so therefore, festival, you cannot have mourning. There are two completely contradictory ideas. But Shabbos, Mi'orok Simcha, never says on Shabbos, in all the descriptions in the Torah of Shabbos, it never says Simcha. It doesn't say joy. So joy or happiness. Yes, on Shabbos, we don't have Simcha. We have a different word. It's called oneg. We have delight. Delight is different from joy. Different from joy. You could be depressed and really, I guess, have an oneg. Have the oneg. You have a good bath. You could have a good piece of food, but that's delight. So we have delight on Shabbos as opposed to simcha. Simcha is pure happiness. Okay, so back to the Gemara. The Gemara now says, let's try and bring a proof. Let's say that this question about whether or not you have mourning on Shabbos in private or not, let's say it's connected to another question, to another dispute amongst the Tanaim. What's the other dispute? The other dispute deals with what we call an onain. What's an onain? An onain is a mourner during the period where the body is not yet buried. In some respects, we'll see an onain is stricter than a mourner, and in some respects, an onain is not as strict. Because what's an onain supposed to be doing? The onain is supposed to be spending all their mind and preoccupation. All their mind has to be focused on burying the dead, and so therefore, anything that will distract them from that is going to be prohibited. But however, a mourner, but they're not mourning yet because they have not yet buried the dead. So therefore, that's the distinction between the two situations. So we'll see now. So we have the following case: Misha Meso Mutofana. Let's say somebody has their dead body lying in front of them, so they're an onain. The body has not yet been buried, and in those cases, it was very small homes, very small houses, very few rooms. So if you have a dead body in front of you, and you need to eat. You go into a different room. Let's say there's no other place to go. You go to your friend's house. Let's say your friend, you don't have a friend. You make a partition of 10 cubits high, or 10 tefachim high, 10 handbreadths size. Why can't you just go outside to eat? So, doesn't suggest that. Maybe it's Shabbos and there's no Erev, so you can't go outside. Maybe once he doesn't want to leave the body. So let's say he has nothing to make a mechitza with. Then he just turns around and eats. You don't want to eat in front of the body because you're supposed to be doing all your attention on the body itself. And so therefore it'd be considered like haughtiness to start eating. You don't recline and eat. You don't eat meat. You don't drink wine. You don't make a bracha. When you're an onain, you don't make any blessings because everything is being done is focused on burying the dead. You don't make a zimun. You don't make a bracha for him. Meaning say you don't include him in your brachas. You don't include him in the zimun. Upater, and this onain is exempt from Kriya Shema, from Shema, Minat Tefillah, from prayers, Minat Tefillin, from wearing tefillin, Mikol mitzvos amuras b'Torah, from all the mitzvos that are written in the Torah. The onain is exempt. Ub'Shabbos, and when it will be Shabbos Kodesh, Meised v'Ochel. So if he be an onain over Shabbos, we don't extend animas to Shabbos. What's the reasoning? Because on Shabbos you can't be occupied with burying the dead, so there's nothing to do. So what do you do on Shabbos? On Shabbos you recline and you eat. V'Ochel basar v'shosei yayin. You eat meat and you drink wine. U'mevarech, and you make a bracha. U'mezamein, and you do the zimun. U'mevarchen u'mezamein olav. So on Shabbos you do make the blessings. As a regular onain, you're not allowed to eat meat or drink wine because that'll distract you from your mitzvah. But on Shabbos, you're allowed to eat meat and drink wine, and you make a bracha, and you include them in the zimun, v'chai b'kriyas shema, tefillah u'v'tefillin, and you're obligated in Shema, in prayers and tefillin, umikol mitzvos hamuras b'Torah, and all the mitzvos that are listed in the Torah. U'b'Shabbos mesav v'ochel, and on Shabbos you are mesav v'ochel, you recline and you eat meat, v'shote yayin, and you drink the wine. Mevarach mezam mevarach noam. V'chayev b'kriyas shema b'tefillin, v'chayev b'kriyas shema u'b'tefillah u'b'tefillin. Well, you don't wear tefillin on Shabbos, so therefore, for that reason, that's not in the manuscripts. They take that out. And so okay, fine. So you take out the word tefillin because obviously you don't wear tefillin on Shabbos. We call mitzvos amuras b'Torah, and all the mitzvos in the Torah. Although there is a position where we did this in the Gemara elsewhere, where according to some you do wear tefillin on Shabbos. So maybe the Brisa is going according to that shita that says you do wear tefillin on Shabbos. Rabbi Gamliel says, Rabbi Gamliel says no, because you're obligated in these things on Shabbos, you're obligated in everything on Shabbos. So what is everything? One is because you're obligated in this, you're obligated in everything. Rabbi Yochanan says that the difference between them is tash mishamita. What is that? Marital relations. That Rabbi Gamliel says you're allowed to have the marital relations on Shabbos because the laws of Aninos don't apply. Whereas the Tanakama is saying, no, you can't have marital relations. What's the distinction? Isn't the distinction between them Marasavar Yesh Avelos B'Shabbos, that the Tanakama is saying that there's mourning on Shabbos and that's why you can't have the marital relations, and Marasavar Ein Avelos B'Shabbos, whereas Rabbi Gamliel is saying, no, there's no mourning on Shabbos, therefore you could have the marital relations. Gemara says, no, this is not the same disputes. These are two different disputes, because in this case, the body's right there in front of you. Maybe in the first case, the Tanakama says that you can't have marital relations on Shabbos when you're an onaim, when the body's not buried. Because the dead body's right in front of you. But in the case over here, in our situation, where you're in a mourning, but there's no dead body in front of you, well, maybe where there's no dead body in front of you, then and you're sitting shiva, then they would allow you to have the marital relations. And also the adkan will come Rabbi Gamliel Hasam, and maybe Rabbi Gamliel says there you can have marital relations. The kati you're not yet a mourner. That's why you could have it. There's the laws of Aninos, you're not yet a mourner. But in this case over here in Shiva, where you are a mourner, maybe Rabbi Gamliel would allow you to have relations. We'll just do three more lines. By Minei, we're on top of 24a. By Minei, Rabbi Yochanan Mishmuel, Yesh Avelos B'Shabbos, or Ein Avelos B'Shabbos. So Rabbi Yochanan asked Shmuel, how did he ask him? Rabbi Yaakov Emden points out that they were never together. Rabbi Yochanan never left Eretz Yisrael, and Shmuel never left Bavel. So maybe he sent him a letter. Some say he sent him a letter, some say it's a different version. Anyway, Rabbi Yochanan, or sent him a messenger. Rabbi Yochanan asked Shmuel, Yesh Avelos B'Shabbos, or Ein Avelos B'Shabbos, or there was a mourning on Shabbos or not, meaning in private. Are you allowed to have marital relations when you're a mourner on that Shabbos? Amar Lei, and Shmuel responds, Ein Avelos B'Shabbos. There's no mourning on Shabbos, and that's a powerful idea. Ein Avelos B'Shabbos. On Shabbos, even if you have troubles, you have stress, you have distress, you have things annoying you, get rid of the Avelos on Shabbos. No mourning on Shabbos. All right, my friends, I'll be happy to address any questions.